So I was just going to say the opposite thing. If I asked, these 4 professors over here if they thought I was going to be anything, I would have bet they would have probably voted me down in a survey or something like that. I wasn't necessarily an outstanding student, but I feel like I did probably try harder than most students, and I'll get to that a little bit here. But yeah, I live here in Cedar actually, and I started an outdoor equipment business right after I graduated SUU. But I feel like my story starts a little bit before that, and so that's kind of what I'm going to dive into. By raise of hands, any of you guys ever seen or heard of this company, Outdoor Vitals? Sweet, there's a few of you. That's good. We do direct-to-consumer, so we're only online. Outdoor equipment such as sleeping bags. This particular sleeping bag is one we've got patented. It's got a foot box that can zip out, and you can run a hammock straight through it. Ran a Kickstarter on that. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. That's where half the people in Cedar know me from, is from that Kickstarter. Didn't know we had a business before the Kickstarter, and that's something we just recently ran. But we've got sleeping pads, tents, backpacks. So that's kind of an overview of the business itself. I wanted to share some numbers just so that you guys understand maybe that in the world of online space, it's really hard to know who to listen to. Everyone's an expert. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what the company's done so you know where we came from. So in 2014, we started about halfway through the year. I started it with about $500. And by the end of the year, we did about $15,000 in sales. The following year, we did about $250,000 in sales. And then 2016 was actually my first year that I was full-time with the business. And I didn't quit my day job actually, and I'll cover this a little bit too, but I didn't quit my day job until I'd earned more money in a single day with my side business than a month at my day job. I was like, all right, this is stable enough, I can quit my day job. So 2016 was the first year that we were off and full-time with everything. Hired a few employees that year. We did over $1 million in sales, and then last year we just finished at about $2 million in sales. Another side act I just wanted to throw in here as well is I do have a lot of interest in real estate, and along with this we've also been able to purchase about $1 million in real estate and have about 13 rental locations with that. A lot of those actually play strategically into our business as well, as far as being a warehouse, multiple warehouse location that we can expand and grow into. So, all right, so how did I get here? I wanted to start off by just sharing some principles that I call it kind of my formula for success, right? Everyone wants to know a formula for success. Before I get into that though, how many of you guys are in here because you really, really, really want to be an entrepreneur? Just raise your hands. Like you're like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur or nothing else. Raise them higher. Okay, good to know. Sounds like we also have a pretty diverse group here, so the kind of what I'm going to talk about here does apply to a lot of different elements. So how did I get here? Well, that's me as a kid, and something that I've always been very, very passionate about is learning all the time. In fact, in Professor Stillman's class, he had everyone listen to a podcast. I think I felt like I was the only person that had listened to a podcast before he'd required that, and I just couldn't believe that. As a kid, this is when my parents learned that I was capable of driving that without them. That's when I learned that I was capable of getting lost if I didn't have my parents around. But the principle of learning every day is really, really big. How many? There's an SU alumni, Garrett Gunderson. Maybe some of you guys have heard of him. That's one of the first people I remember actually listening to. I listened to a podcast probably when I was 12 or 13 is when I started listening to podcasts and reading books about business and entrepreneurship. That's really when that spark started to come alive in me. One of the best ways that I found to learn, besides an education at SUU, which I'll get into some big things that I've learned from SUU and from going to college, is I love to listen to stuff. So I've already mentioned podcasts, Audible. Audible sent me an email at the end of last year, and they told me how many hours of books I'd listened to. This kind of caught me off guard. They said that I'd listened to 280 hours worth of Audible books last year, and I listened to podcasts more than I listened to Audible. So on average, I'd say I listen to well over an hour's worth of material a day. And for my career, especially in online sales and things like that, that's super, super big because online tactics change almost daily. So learning every day is really, really big. Also, the more that you know, this is kind of a quote actually from Garrett, I included that. The more that you understand, the more likely you're going to get paid for that understanding. The more value you can create, the dollars are just going to follow that. So whether you want to be an entrepreneur or whether you want to pursue a career working for someone, the more valuable you are, the dollars will always follow. Don't focus so much on the dollar, focus on what you're actually creating that's valuable. Okay, work for an education, not money. So when I was 18 years old, graduated high school, I went out and sold alarms. Probably have some people that sold alarms. Most of you probably sold for money. The reason I wanted to sell alarms is I wanted to learn how to sell something. I knew that sales was going to be a big, big part in actually being successful as an entrepreneur. So I went out to sell alarms. One of the hardest things I've ever done. Made great money, but the main thing I came home from that with was the knowledge of learning how to sell, at least in part. I'd read all morning, I'd go knock all day, and by the end of the summer, I was a much better salesman. I actually could get a few dates now, which I couldn't before. So that was a big thing for me. Might have played into why I wouldn't wanted to sell, but working for an education is huge. This is a picture of me when I worked at Health and Med. So I actually did an internship rather than go sell alarms when I was in college. But while I was at the internship, I realized I didn't want to do what that internship was about. And so I started looking around town, and I came across this company called HealthMedCom. They were importing things from China and selling them online, and I was like, hey, that's exactly what I want to do. So I went and I gave them my application, and I waited. And about a month went by, and I never heard back from them. And I'm like, I've got to work there. I've got to learn what they know. So I went in, and I met the owner, and I said, hey, I don't have much time. I work a full-time job right now. But what I do have is I have a lunch break. And I'm willing to pack my lunch, come over here, and do something for you for an hour every day. So I'll be here tomorrow, have something for me to do. I didn't realize what that entailed, because when I got there the next day, he had a stack of bank documents about this tall, and he said, I need you to do my taxes for last year. I'm a finance major. I should have taken more accounting classes. That's something I regret. And so I was off doing bookkeeping for a $2 million a year company during my lunch hours. I did that for about a month and a half, again, trying to create value for this company. It was time to go back to school. That was during the summer, and I said, hey, I need to get hired here, or I can't work here anymore. And they hired me. So I worked there part-time while I was going to school. Again, I'm looking at all of their financial documents. So I'm seeing the guts of the company. Where is the money really coming from? Where are we being profitable? I can see our ad spend. I can see our marketing budget. I can see our profit. I can see all these things. I can really get to know this company, which played out to be huge. So as that year goes by, at the end of the year, all of my classmates are taking these jobs for $40,000, $50,000, and I wasn't even applying for any of those. I got hired on at about $30,000, but I took that pay cut on purpose because I knew that this company was going to provide me with more long-term education. So I went full-time with them after I graduated, and I took on all of their paid advertising. So I managed about $7,000 a month worth of ad spend online, as well as was still doing their finances. So now I get to see where we're spending our ads and the return on that ad spend. And that really, really opened up a lot of options for me to see how I could start a company similar, but in a different market. So that plan turned out to be really big. I also got to learn how to be on camera. So I was posting YouTube videos for these guys. I was doing all sorts of things, which played really big because now we have a YouTube channel we post weekly to with coming up on 10,000 subscribers from the last year's worth of our work. So I learned a ton by working for an education, not for money. That's a huge one. Okay, so principle number 3 is be disciplined. So when I was starting, I feel like that's one area where I have been able to maybe edge out some people. I feel like I was never the most talented person, but I maybe outworked a lot of classmates, a lot of people in sports. Definitely wasn't like naturally strong, naturally athletic, but I bet I practiced twice as much as some of my competition. So I started the company with $500. How many of you guys right now have $500 to start a business? Okay, if you don't, then that's your first thing. You should definitely be disciplined enough with your spending to have a little bit of money to spend on starting a business. I worked part-time. etc. I had a scholarship during college. It allowed me to have a little bit of money to start. That's number one, guys. You got to be able to at least manage that. I worked for my job for 1.5 years. I talked about that. I worked that, and the main reason I was working that wasn't because I was scared to jump into a full-time position with my company. It was because the longer I did that, the faster I could grow, the more money I could reinvest, and the faster I could get this off the ground and running. But that was hard, because when I was doing that, I was working at least 60 hours a week for well over 2 years. I'd work my 40-hour day job, I'd go home and work at least another 5 hours or so at night. But that's tough, right? It's not easy to do this kind of stuff. Over the course of that 1.5 years before I actually started working here and pulling out some income from the business, I was able to also stay really disciplined with our spending and come up with another $10,000 to put into the business, which really helped it get off the ground and get things going faster as well. Part of where that sales training came in from knocking doors was convincing my wife that our $2,000 tax return should not go towards shoes and clothes, but should go into buying more sleeping bags. She doesn't have a big interest in sleeping bags, so that was a tough sell, but we made it happen. But being disciplined is really, really big. So success to me is a part of two things. Whether you want to be successful, like I said, as an entrepreneur, as something else, really boils down to this equation. And that's knowledge plus discipline is going to equal success. If you take the time to study every single day something that you're interested in, maybe it's, I don't know, RC cars. You know, if you study that every single day and you practice that, you can become the best at that. If you want to start a business, you should be studying every single day by coming to SUU, and then maybe a little something extra on the side. You're studying that every single day, and then you've got the discipline to not only learn, but do. That's been the biggest thing. So as I started my company, tons of people were interested in it. I talked to hundreds of people, and they'd say, what are you doing to be successful? Oh, you got started on Amazon. Well, what if I got started on Amazon? I'd say, perfect. Do this, this, and this, and go learn this, and go try it. And every single one, about 100 people, I had 2 people even get to the stage where they purchased a product to try to sell. So 100 people, right? I'm telling them the exact blueprint. Go do this, buy, find this product, source it here, bring it in, put it on Amazon, sell it, right? We had 2 people even attempt it, and both those people burned out. As soon as they got the product and put it up there, it wasn't easy, and they dropped out too. So the discipline aspect is huge. I'm sure a lot of you guys know someone who's like a know-it-all, studies all the time, watches the news, does all this stuff, but you might not consider them successful because maybe they lack the discipline, right? Well, you probably also know someone who's extremely hardworking, always working hard, but they never do any studying either, right? I don't know of a particular job description. I'll try not to discriminate, but there's people out there that'll work really, really hard, but they don't ever take the time to learn either. They don't ever take that time to sharpen the saw so that they can cut faster. But if you can tie both of those in together, I can guarantee you're going to be successful at something. Okay, so that's kind of my general overview on success as far as what I think it takes. Whatever you're going into, if you can apply that, you're going to be successful. A lot of people think there's just a one answer fix. There's one thing they can do to be successful, that there's an answer. But even when I've laid my business plan in front of someone and said, do this in a different industry, people aren't doing it. It requires both sides of that equation, okay? So I'm not sure how much content I have here today to present. If there are questions, please ask them. Raise your hands and ask them. If it's something I'm going to cover, I might say I'll get to that. And if it's a question that only applies to you, I'll probably just skip you. So, but is there any questions to this point?
So you said you started the business with $500, but it seems like your business is like online. Did that go to website design or inventory, or do you drop it, or where did that $500 go to?
Okay, I'm gonna cover that in like one slide. That's a great question, though. Great question.
So you said too about the $500 that you put in. How long before you started seeing growth? Because
yeah.
you said you did
I put $500 in. That $500 was 100% to buy product, okay? I sold that product. I used all of the proceeds to buy more product. So I bought 3 sleeping bags. I sold the 3, I bought 5 sleeping bags. I sold the 5, I bought 10 sleeping bags. I sold the 10, I bought another 10 sleeping bags because I was too scared to buy 15. I sold the 10, and then I went out on this huge limb and I bought 50 sleeping bags and thought I was never going to sell them, and I had them sold within about 3 weeks of delivery. That's how I got started with my money. So I'm going to cover a few key principles that I feel like helped Outdoor Vitals grow. And that really started with looking at the market trends. And this is kind of where working for that other company really helped me see some of the potential, right? So whenever you're starting a business, I like to, especially when I'm talking to my team, I say, you know, what horse do we want to hook our wagon up to, right? I mean, I'm trying to use SUU as much as I can here. Got old Sorrow there. So if whatever it is, we're trying to look at what the trend is and if that's something we want to connect to. So when I was starting out, I was looking at retail stores and online, and which one's growing and which one's failing. Well, that's pretty simple. Online's growing like crazy. I want to hook myself up to that edge in the market. Okay, what about this new direct-to-consumer thing? Is that something that's here to stay? There's tons of businesses doing it. They're growing like crazy. I think that a direct-to-consumer business is the right market trend to jump on and follow. So let's do direct-to-consumer online. Okay, what about Amazon? Is Amazon really here to stay? I mean, they're just like a small multi-billion-dollar company. I don't know if they're really growing. I think they are. Should I hook up to Amazon and should we connect to that? Yes, that's what we did. So looking at those is a really big thing. We just were looking at doing an overhaul on our website, and all of my guys were saying, WordPress. Most of you guys probably have no idea what this is, but it's a platform. Let's do it on WordPress. We could build this way easier. But I was like, WordPress has been around for 10 years, but Shopify is a newer website, e-commerce-based company. If you're thinking about doing that, look at Shopify. And they're growing like crazy, and everyone's integrating with them, and that's where everything is at. Let's hook up to that horse, and rather than go back to this old one and see how it all pans out. So looking at those market trends is really big. Anytime you're looking at a business, definitely take a step back and look at where the market's going, because some of the last things I would advise doing right now would be, say, starting a brick and mortar business in Cedar City, right? The markets are showing that it's all going online, right? So looking at some of those would be save you a lot of headache. You're fighting an uphill battle, instead you're riding a wave up. Learn from others and benchmark a competition. So this is really when direct-to-consumer played in for us. By the way, I think direct-to-consumer, there's still a ton of advantages out there. So you guys are doing 90-second pitches. If in those, I would definitely consider doing something with direct-to-consumer. But we looked at our competition, we saw what they were doing good, and this bag was the bag that I had benchmarked. I was like, if I can make this sleeping bag at half the price, we're onto something. And so that's what we did. We made this sleeping bag at half the price. We put it on Amazon, and our goal, once we put it on Amazon, was to outsell them. And you know, that seems pretty outrageous. Kelty's a huge brand, you know, multi-million dollar brand. They're doing really, really well. They have hundreds of reviews on there. But we had an advantage. We had an advantage because they were selling directly to Amazon, and we were only using Amazon's platform. So we could tailor make our ads. We could tailor make our listing. We could put better images on. We could do all these things to make our conversion rates go up. And what happened, we were able to outsell them and beat them on the Amazon marketplace. Going forward for us, we have some pretty big aspirations. We've got other companies benchmarked. By looking at what they're doing that's good and then figuring out how maybe you can slightly tweak it, we found some of our best success. People that are coming in and trying to make something totally new, you're going to have a much harder time. You're going to have to teach people what it is. You're going to have to, there's just a much bigger uphill battle by creating something completely brand new. Is that the right thing? It might be the right thing, but it might be a really hard first step. Whereas if you can take something that you've already seen proven in the world, slightly tweak it, slightly make it better, I found much more success there. So I wanted to get to this. This is kind of the lean startup, get to cash part of it. You'd asked, I don't know if you wouldn't mind repeating your question about the $500.
Yeah, I just said like where did that, but you kind of answered that, like where did that $500 go to?
Okay.
What would you like startup expenses?
Perfect. So by working for this other company, I was able to see, okay, they've got website sales. Well, what's required to run a website? Well, you have to have a website, you have to build a website. Sometimes that requires additional people. Sometimes that requires more management. Okay, if I'm also building a website, it means I got to ship something, right? Well, now I've got to have someone to ship the product. I've got to have shipping supplies. I've got to have everything that would be entitled to ship the product. Okay, I've also got to have a higher level of customer service now, because maybe not only are they going to be asking questions about the product, they're going to be asking questions about how to check out, or where's my product, or all these types of questions. By working for this other company, I was able to see that with the amount of money they spend on payroll to manage a website, as well as the amount of ad spend that they were spending on the website, it wasn't going to be an easy battle there. But they were selling on Amazon. And Amazon at that time was a much less competitive platform to get started on. They already had the website. They already had the traffic. They already had an ad system built into Amazon. And so Amazon is a very, very easy first step for us. So assessing where I was at and how much money I had to put in, Amazon absolutely was the first step for us to get started. Amazon since has gotten really, really tough, and it's really, really hard to launch a product on Amazon, and you most definitely can't do it with $500 anymore. But it is still possible, and you could talk to me that on a more specific basis. But getting to cash was really, really big. When you're starting with a budget of a college student, you have to get to cash fast. Without it, I mean, you're going to spend everything you've got, not get to cash, and your business is dead already. You've got to be able to assess how much money you have to start out and figure out how you can use that to get to cash so that you can continue that battle. There's a book called The Lean Startup. Any of you guys heard that? I would highly advise that you read it if you are looking to start up. It talks a lot about proving a model before you put in a lot of money. So even for bigger companies, they should really prove their models before they dump all of their assets into that. It's really, really big, but it also works really, really well for startups so that you can prove your model sooner and then have that confidence, right? I had more money than the $500 that I showed there, but I wasn't willing to put that in the beginning because that was a ton of money to me back then. So practicing that lean startup. Any other questions about starting the startup phase here, or lean startup, getting to cash, anything like that? No? Dakota?
Well, I have a question for you. Well, just from my experience in Amazon, like, if you don't have any reviews or anyone clicking on your stuff, you're kind of way down the list. So my question is, how did you get those first customers to like purchase?
So I started in a different era. So even 3 years ago on Amazon, it was a totally different area. No one wanted to do sleeping bags back then. They're big, they're bulky, you got to ship them. They didn't follow the general mold of something that would be a good Amazon product. Something like this would be a good Amazon product. This is an inflatable camping pillow that we make. Fits in a shoebox, light, easy to ship, can't break it, stuff like that. And so we went against the mold, which created an opportunity for us to have less competition when we started. Now, if you were to start on Amazon, you would have to essentially buy some traffic, buy those reviews by giving away product. You'd have to give away product, get some initial reviews, and it gets a lot more pricey on Amazon. Amazon also is not a place for a premium product anymore. It's changing a lot. As you guys go on there and search for things, you'll see that all of the top search results are for very, very cheap products. And so our business now is pivoting and working in a lot of we always saw Amazon as the stepping stone, but we're getting a little bit more aggressive on our growth off of Amazon. So I had to throw this in here. Tons of people come up with ideas. They come up with the next great thing. And I even have people, I probably get an email every single week saying, hey, I know what your company should do. Your company should make this product. It's the most amazing design. I would do it, but et cetera, et cetera. There's tons and tons of people out there that can come up with the ideas, and then they think that they need to go buy a patent, and patents are expensive, right? I would highly, highly advise that if you have an idea, not to worry so much about the patent. The idea is the easiest part of a business. The idea is the cheapest part of it. People always come to you with ideas. Even after you get started with the business, people come to you with ideas. The ideas are definitely the easiest part of the whole process. The hard part is having that discipline to actually get your feet wet, get dirty, and actually make something happen. And when it doesn't work, being able to pivot and keep moving forward. So that's not to say that patents aren't really important. If you've got the right in the right situations, we have a patent. My patent really isn't that much for protecting ourselves. My patent is really more of a marketing play, saying that we have a patented product. But that being said, if you've got an idea that you just think is the best thing in the world, test it. Test it before you ever put money into a patent. Do the lean startup method. See if people would be willing to buy it. Don't talk to your friends and family and say, hey, would you buy this? They're going to say yes. Like literally, you can pay for surveys online. You can do a Google survey and pay for that. Definitely make sure that people are willing to buy something before you ever invest in something like that, especially in the startup stages. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some mistakes. So a lot of people see a business like ours, they say, wow, you went from $0 to $2 million in a couple years. That seems really, really good. It looks like we've never made a mistake in our life. I've definitely made mistakes. And I'm sure that a lot of you, as you start your own businesses, will also make mistakes, but being able to pivot on from those. So right here are 3 products that I would consider semi-failures of ours. The backpack is actually a really good product, but I bought way too many of them. I bought like 1,000 backpacks at once because I knew it was a great backpack. I spent a year designing this thing, knew it was going to be a great product, bought 1,000 units of it, and it was like crickets, right? We've sold plenty of them at this point, but I took it on my shoulders to think that I knew what the market wanted. Well, this product has a lot of the features of a premium backpack, but it's not the price of a budget backpack, but it's right in between a really high quality backpack and a low quality backpack, and that's a bad place to be, and the backpack hasn't moved for us. The kids sleeping bag, I was like, oh, that'll be easy. I'll just make a kids sleeping bag. People will buy it left and right. We get people emailing in about them. It wasn't a part of our core values to have a kid's sleeping bag, especially a kid's sleeping bag that was like that. That's not really that ultra light. It's not really a great backpacking bag or anything like that. It was just me saying, oh, I could make an extra buck if I did this. It was a bad choice. We have tarps. Our tarps have sold really well, but our branding has some red in it. A lot of times we're doing like the vitals in red, and so I was like, well, why don't I do a red tarp? There's no reason for that other than just maybe my ego getting in the way, saying, oh, it'd be cool, maybe someone likes a red tarp. No one wants a red tarp. They all want charcoal tarps. So 2 things there. This has probably been our biggest mistake to date. We moved to a very high quality factory. With so doing, their lead times were very, very long. They were requiring me to do projections 6 and 12 months out on a startup. And that was really, really hard. So I'm saying, okay, we've grown this much in the past. How much are we going to grow in the future? So I put in all these projections, used a ton of stuff from Professor Kraft's class over here. I've got this massive, like, multi-hundred spreadsheet that I use for projections that I always add and tweak and make bigger and better. But the problem was Amazon is rented land, right? And we started seeing some pretty aggressive stuff with Amazon as far as moving towards cheaper quality products, but I'd already put in these big orders, right? So that put us in a little bit of a tight spot where we have, for once in our company history, we have an excess amount of inventory. But basing stuff off of not actual facts and trying to make decisions on that is not a good idea. To go back to this, you guys saw our sales, right? I'm going to give something away here. So this is an inflatable camping pillow. Weighs like an ounce or something like that. Who saw that graph and was like, ooh, that's trouble? And why is that trouble?
Because that's how trends go. They go up and then they come down. And inflation can sometimes send things in the wrong direction.
Okay.
From the standpoint of making decisions about what might happen.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna rephrase the question just a little bit. There's a specific formula that you'll learn to calculate if you're a finance or accounting major. If Professor Haslam was in here, he talked a lot about it with us, and it was a shattering concept for me to understand when I was here at SUU. I couldn't believe that companies could do this. Any thoughts on that? So it's more something in particular.
So I know if you go too fast, you run into cash flow issues with getting enough cash to be able to purchase the large quantities of stuff that you're trying to grow into.
Correct.
At the same time, have your customer base grow.
Correct. And is there what do you refer to that? Like when you're trying to figure out how fast can you grow, what is that called? Anyone?
I can't think of anything now.
That's correct. But Sustainable growth rate. There it is. So that for us was really, really big. We've been growing unsustainably, right? We've been growing way faster than we could afford to do, which means that we have to go and find outside capital. That's where we really ran into problems, is I wanted to grow as fast as I could because I knew we were sitting on this opportunity of a direct-to-consumer outdoor gear company. And so I was like, we got 3 to 5 years before these big companies start to make changes. Grow as fast as we can. So we're growing as fast as we can. Well, that's when you're going to compound problems when you do things like over-project your sales. I'm buying inventory based off of loans now. So now I've got inventory sitting there. I'm paying interest on that. That inventory essentially is getting more expensive every single day. But sustainable growth rate is big. I'd never heard of that. So those of you that don't know what a sustainable growth rate is, it basically is the concept that if you grow your company too fast, you'll grow yourself bankrupt. And your company will, in essence, implode. There is a formula to determine a sustainable growth rate. For us, we do have still a pretty high sustainable growth rate. So now we're actually shooting for about 40 to 50% on our growth rate that we can actually sustain without outside funding, if we can hit some net income levels that we would have to do to support that. So that's kind of an internal goal. But now what happens when I know that, from coming here to SU and learning about some of this stuff, now that I know that and I have that calculation in, I can work towards that, and I'm not going to ever overbuy our inventory, or I shouldn't ever do it nearly as bad, because now I know that we can sustain this. I won't, even if I overbuy a little bit, I'm not going to hopefully have to go get loan money to buy for that. I can grow at a much more sustainable rate, which also puts me in a better position to make better strategic decisions and do things not based out of crisis mode, but more in a clear, less stressed out mind, and it just all around it's a better scenario. So sustainable growth rate, remember that one. So I am a finance major. I am not a designer, yet I designed that logo with a free piece of software online when I was probably sitting in a class here at SUU. And how many of you, by raise of hands, see an O and a V in this logo? Okay. How many of you see an owl in this logo? More than most. How many of you saw both? As soon as you initially saw it, saw both? That's more than our surveys say. It's not a good logo. We're redoing the logo. That's something that's a big focus for us. I'm a big 80-20 kind of guy where I'm like, get to cash, do as best you can, focus on the things that generate real revenue. And so now I'm having to hire people onto my team that are more focused on our appearance, stuff like that. And so we are working on logo design. That was another failure of ours. This sentence right here, this is one that we're learning. We're selling on Amazon where prices mattered. But in this sentence, premium gear at affordable prices, our hashtag was opening the outdoors. It's in essence contradicting itself. No one thinks of premium gear as being cheap, and no one thinks of cheap gear as being premium. While that was a fancy way of saying it and it worked to get us to a couple $1 million, that's going away this year, and we will be only focused on the premium aspect. The price point will be a side effect. So those are failures, but you have to be able to do something, right? Action's way better than inaction, and then be able to realize that that isn't the end, and to be able to pivot and keep moving forward. You're definitely going to make mistakes starting out. You're definitely going to do things wrong, but your ability to pivot and learn from those is way bigger. I've probably learned more about our business in the last 6 months when I've had to deal with some of this stuff than I have in the first 2 years when everything was just growing like crazy and it was all roses and all that kind of stuff. You learn more from having a few hiccups that's going to allow us to build to a bigger company. Okay, and that kind of goes along with always look ahead. Every single year I sit down and we look at a very strategic level of, okay, what's happened in the market online? What's happened with new competition? What's happened to all these things? And how are we going to adapt and move forward with that? In the world of an online business, things change not even yearly, not even monthly, more like weekly. And so being able to adapt to that is really, really big, and that really requires you to be able to sit down, take the time, and look at those market trends and look at where you want to be. So that's it for the presentation. So let's jump to questions. We have 3 employees right now, full-time besides myself, but we will definitely be hiring more soon.
Often mistakes define the way that people view your business. How are you able to overcome perhaps maybe the bad reviews to be able to continue to grow and allow people to want what you're selling?
So bad reviews, I'd love it if I could just like have Amazon take off like our first year's worth of reviews, because to me getting to cash was really, really important. It was a really, really big thing for us. But after we kind of got to cash and grew, I was able to really focus on quality for a while. So we definitely have some reviews where people are, you know, talking about our zippers and stuff like that. But as long as you're actually reading those, you can go back to those and say, hey, we've updated our zipper. Thanks for the feedback. We took that to heart, and we've put a new anti-snag YKK zipper on our bags now. So being really real with people is very helpful. Responding to them is very helpful. A lot of people really like to see that companies actually respond to things. One of the biggest benefits of doing an online-based business and a direct-to-consumer-based business is we get feedback like crazy. If you're a store selling through our REI, right? So if we were selling our gear to REI, then REI is selling it to the consumer. Well, when that consumer brings it back to the store, REI doesn't say, hey, why did you bring this back? I'm going to write all this down and I'm going to send it to the supplier. No, when they bring it back, they just bring it back, they give them their money back, and they're off. But we, every single return, we're like, okay, what happened? What broke? What didn't, you know? And so we can pivot and make adjustments and make our company better from those bad reviews and those experiences.
Do you guys do much in like targeted marketing? So like running ads that are targeted for like specific people, like on Facebook or anything like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I kind of joke with people that I am a finance major that learned marketing and became a designer overnight, because I design all of our gear now. But I learned a lot about marketing. Marketing has changed with Facebook. It's way more about interests now than it is even age demographic, right? So a lot of people are like, okay, my avatar is 32 years old, is a male, you know, has brown hair, those types of things. Those types of things are all going away. Now it's, we have someone who's interested in backpacking, whether they're 50 or 6. We're focused on interest-based stuff like that. But then we work a lot with retargeting, with taking people, you know, our initial ad to someone might be like, hey, look at this is kind of a problem that's happening. And then we hit them with a second ad that says, hey, you remember that problem? Well, we've got a solution. And then we hit them with a third ad that says, hey, you didn't click on that solution thing. What about 10% off on that solution thing? So now that you knew the problem, and now you know that we've got a solution. Does that make sense? But yeah, we use Facebook very heavily. We're also we use YouTube a lot. YouTube is very, very cheap traffic. If you watch 30 seconds of a YouTube ad, that's considered a view, and we're getting 1 and 2 cent views on YouTube. So we're getting a ton of impressions on YouTube for very, very cheap.
What's the best way to learn how to watch and see market trends with accuracy?
How to watch and see? Do something based around a passion, because you're going to be right in the middle of a passion. So if I did something that was about, I don't know, building calculators or something, like I would have no interest. I would know none of the market trends, anything like that. But when it's about outdoor gear, heck, I'm outdoor all the time. You know, I'm a big hunter, I'm a big backpacker. And so if there's a new backpack that comes out, I've got the magazine at my house that's going to be announcing that. And so you're going to stay way, way more on top of market trends by being passionate about it on a more micro level, not on a mass level. I think that's harder to teach. That's just more of staying really aware, asking some of the right questions, and following the news. You know, like knowing that Amazon's big, like that's pretty common knowledge. It's just a matter of actually seeing that and internalizing it and saying, what can I do about that? Knowing that e-commerce is growing, that's common knowledge to everyone. But being able to see that, internalize it, and apply it.
How do you pick a manufacturer to make the stuff you design?
I started with a website called AliExpress. It's a subcategory of Alibaba, where I could buy 1 unit at a time, but I could also buy 1,000 units at a time and get a better price point. AliExpress has done pretty well. There's a lot of people that are just, AliExpress is almost getting cut off with things like Wish.com, where they're kind of cutting out you dealing with a Chinese person and allowing you to deal more with a US person, but it's still the same type of a scenario. AliExpress worked well, but Alibaba is probably more of the realm you can go into. The biggest one for us though, and how we were able to take our manufacturing to a much better supplier, was we started going to trade shows. You go to trade shows and you might see a big company like Patagonia on the inside of the trade show marketing their gear. Then you walk out and you go in the little side area and all of a sudden there's their manufacturer. And you can talk to them and you can get contact information. So.
Well, it's not on our website, right, it's right here. But I love the idea of the refurbished. I clicked on the clearance and you have that refurbished sleeping bag. Do you have a lot of that? Because that, I mean, a premium thing.
That's why Amazon sucks. People will buy gear on Amazon, use it for a weekend, and send it back to us all the time. So we deal with about a 4% return percentage, and so we do clearance a lot of that. If people have actually like we know they're doing that because, and this might be good advice for some of you guys that are probably going to do that to us. Because we'll get a box back from Amazon, and Amazon sometimes will take a return and they won't even open the box. They'll just put it in a different box and send it back to us. Well, a lot of these people, we'll get a box back from them and we open it up and hey, there's our sleeping bag, but there's also a sleeping pad in here, and there's a tent in here, and there's all these things you'd need for a backpacking trip, and they thought they could just send it all back in one box to Amazon and stuff. People are doing that to us, and so we do have some refurbished items.
I just thought it was a great idea. Because premium camping is so important, but we get it.
Yeah, we sell quite a bit of it, for sure, for sure.
Do you guys have any traction internationally? Is that the like prospect of digital currency?
So international is definitely something we want to look at, but I don't feel like we have solidified our base good enough in the US, and the US economy is so big that I'm not ready to go international. We get people messaging us all the time asking, do you have a UK supplier? Can we do these types of things? Because they don't want to pay import duties or excessive shipping costs. We have not followed that, and part of the biggest reason for that is I'm not ready to hire someone on my team that can manage that. There's more important people that I could be hiring to help us now, but it's definitely something we would like to expand into. If you are interested in growing a little bit easier on Amazon, but you're willing to work through a lot of garbage, start selling on Amazon.ge, like Germany or UK. Those markets are like where the Amazon market is today. They're like Amazon 5 years ago. So you could start without having to give away a lot of units and stuff like that.
How did you turn, once you started designing the bags, how did you turn your designs into products? And how did that work? How many different kinds of, I guess, demos did you have to do before it went right?
Yeah, so if any of you guys are designers, you're probably familiar with things like CAD and all of these technical ways to design things. I'm familiar with a pencil and a paper, so I draw things and send them over to them. Depending on the technicality of the product I'm doing, it can take, like the backpack probably took us 3 iterations before we got it right. But other items that are less important, it's a lot easier for us to tweak them. You know, the sleeping bag, take the shoulders out 2 inches, add more insulation in the foot box, shorten the zipper, stuff like that. It's really easy, but don't let the design aspect hold you up, because if you go and visit these factories, they've got full-time staff that are there that are much better than you are at designing something. And so if you tell them what to design, they're going to design it their way and their understanding, and a lot of time that turns out better than what you probably could do. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is just coming up with the ideas and then sketching it out and passing that information along.
And how did you decide which factories you were going to work with, and how did you figure out that?
Yeah, so initially it was just opportunity, what was in front of me, but then after that, going to shows, networking, and also talking to people that had used them as suppliers and could vouch for them. Asking who they're supplying. So you can go in, so like our sleeping pad factory, if you watch one of our videos, I'm walking you through a sleeping pad factory in China. So we do a YouTube channel where we post every week, that's what I'm referring to. I'm literally walking through the factory and there's Big Agnes's pad and there's REI's pad and there's this pad. And if they're manufacturing for these huge companies, they're gonna be good enough quality for us, right? And so finding out other people they manufacture for can be really useful.
market for new sleeping bags, and I ended up doing quite a bit of research and ended up buying your sleeping bags, 2 of them. And because I really liked the quality compared with the price of the competitors. So my question is, how do you make them so affordable with the quality and price?
Okay. Yeah, great question. So how many of you guys know by raising hands what a direct-to-consumer business is? Okay, I've been using that a lot. Should have told you that. How many of you guys know what MAP pricing is? MAP pricing. Okay, so MAP pricing is, in essence, if I've got a $50 sleeping bag that I've bought, that's like the cost in China, right? Typically what a company would do, so like my competition, what they're going to do is they're going to sell that to, say, REI, and they're going to sell that sleeping bag to REI for $100. Well, REI's got to make a cut of that money too, right? So they're going to turn around and they're going to list it to a consumer for $200. And so now you've taken a $50 product and made it a $200 product. With our business model, we just sell it to the end consumer for $100. We buy it for $50, sell it for $100, and we've right off the top, typically we're 40 to 50% less than our competition because of that. The good news why you should look at a direct-to-consumer business is these big companies, if they were to stop doing this model right here, that's like 60% of their sales at this point, because that's historically how things have been done. Well, if you're a big company, you can't just slice off half your body and just be like, we're done doing retail, we're all direct to consumer. Well, if you did that, you'd have to fire half your employees, and you'd have to cut your warehouse in half, and you'd have to do all these things that align with it. So at some point, I predict that these companies will feel so much pain from companies like us, just cutting them out of the game, that they're going to have to start second companies or buy companies like us. But that's in essence why we're so much cheaper and why we're still just as profitable as these guys. Well, sometimes we're even more profitable because of extra retail costs that are involved.
Sorry, let me jump in.